In episode 7, you get a flashback to the creation of the Fold. It's basically the same story we heard. But after it was created, Kirigan does grab his mom and take her to safety, where Baghra asks, "What have you done?" But Kirigan was actually proud of it, telling Baghra, "I made something." Like he's a 5th grader coming home from kindergarten making a collage out of macaroni. Present day Kirigan, though, is on the hunt after Alina. And the good news is Alina has located the stag, but she tells Maul, "I have to be the one to kill it." The only issue is she's such a terrible shot that Mal has to line it up for her, and then she can take it. But she doesn't pull the trigger, saying maybe there's another way to do this. She's not quite sure how because Kirigan never taught her about this. He didn't want her to have an amplifier, but she gets closer to the stag to figure out if there's a way to get the power without killing it. And when she touches the stag, she illuminates. It does heighten her ability. But then all of a sudden, the stag is shot by Victor, because Kirigan and his crew have caught up to him, and they fire 2 arrows into Maul, so he's in pretty rough shape, and Alina has to come to his aid, fighting people off using her abilities. But when Kirigan shows up, she has to abandon Maul in order to keep the stag alive. The stag is on borrowed time, but she's able to form a cocoon around it. And that's when Kirigan gives her the ultimatum of saving Maul or saving the stag, and she chooses Maul, even though Maul begged her to kill the thing. As soon as Alina abandons the stag, Kirigan sends one of those shadow daggers to cut its head off, pretty violently. And Kirigan had told Alina, "If you give me the stag, I'll have one of my healers fix up Maul." And he's a man of his word, but he separates the two. He then has Alina dragged into a tent where David places some of the antlers around Alina's neck, and Alina can't figure out why because she didn't kill the stag. She says aloud, "It's not my amplifier." But Kirigan interrupts her, saying, "You asked for this when we first met, to transfer your power to someone who can use it." And she fires back, "Well, I can use it now." He reminds her, though, Maul's life is at stake if she doesn't comply. He then tries to make her understand his logic by saying, "The only thing more powerful than you and me is us together. And together we can end all the wars and we can protect our own." And she asks him, "Are we destroying the Fold?" But he doesn't answer, just saying, "We can do anything." The fact is, Alina doesn't have a lot of options, so she reluctantly goes through this ceremony, where the antlers are put around her neck, and a piece of bone is put on Kirigan's hand. And David uses his abilities to meld the antlers to Alina, and the bone to Kirigan's hand. And it's a pretty rough look for Alina, who has some damn antlers popping out of her neck. Kirigan kind of got off lucky, because he can play his off like a burn mark. But after the ceremony, David tells Kirigan that should do it. That should bridge the gap. And when Kirigan walks over and touches Alina, he can now control her powers. Alina and the general then head to the Fold, where as she's being escorted to a tent, she does run into Maul, but Victor and the guard who's in charge of Maul don't let the two speak. She's then checking out her sweet clavicle antlers when in walks Jenya. They both embrace in a hug, but Alina tells her, "I need to get word to the king about Kirigan." The only issue is Jenya tells Alina that the king is taken ill with a pretty serious sickness. Alina then notices that Jenya is working in another capacity. She's basically gotten a raise. And then Alina suddenly puts it all together. Jenya was gifted to the queen by Kirigan when she was 11, and since then, Jenya has been acting as a spy for him. Alina feels completely betrayed, knowing that Jenya had the ability to poison the king. She then realizes that the letters to Mal were never sent by Jenya, and Jenya admits, "Yeah, I didn't send them, but I didn't have a choice." Alina can't believe that Jenya betrayed their, quote, friendship, but Jenya reminds her, "I was a whipping girl for the queen. Choosing friendship over survival wasn't a luxury I could afford. And I used to try to fight the king off, but that never worked in my favor. And I waited for years for my chance of revenge. But wouldn't you have done the same if you were me?" And Alina admits that yes, the king deserves every bit of your vengeance. But Kirigan does not deserve your loyalty. He's just as responsible for your position as anyone else. Jenya, though, yells, "I am his soldier. We all are." And Alina counters by saying, "We are his pawns. We're nothing more than that." And that's where these two disagree, and that's where they go their separate ways. And while Alina was being betrayed by Jenya, Kirigan went to go visit Maul. Maul's all chained up, and he figures that Kirigan's coming to kill him, but Kirigan isn't. More so bragging about how he'll end up with Alina in the end. He tells Maul, "I read your letters. I mean, all these years, you never appreciated who she is, but that's okay because I do. And it might take some years. It might take 50. But she is ageless. So all I have to do is wait you out. I don't have to kill you. Time will. And by that point, she'll realize that the only person on her level is me." He then leaves, and Maul needs to find a way out. Luckily for Maul, there's a goat in the tent that just so happened to be a goat that Jesper had brought over when Kaz's group crossed the fold. Jesper had somehow gotten really close to this goat in a period of a couple hours and had put a bullet around the goat's neck on a string. So Maul is able to entice the goat over and use the bullet by smashing it against his handcuffs and freeing himself. Look, it's a science that I don't get, but I just watched a woman get neck antlers, so I'm not asking too many questions. And the next day, Alina, with her antlers, is all dressed up, ready to go over the fold with Kirigan, although not by choice. He tries giving her a little pep talk, saying, "You are special, and you're about to prove it to the world." They're not the only ones going over the fold, because there's a lot of foreign diplomats there, and they're all going to be witness to history. She starts to confront him about all of the lies that he's told, the fact that he commissioned someone to poison the king, and he tells her, "All I've done is try to make Ravka safer and make Grisha life safer." And she looks at him and says, "Do you think Genya was safe when you placed her under the king's watch? Am I going to believe that you're going to show Baghra mercy? I could have made Grisha safe, but you never gave me a choice." He tries telling her that she could be the amends to his mistake, but she says the fold was no mistake. And he tells her it wasn't supposed to be like this. I never meant for it to be something where the king or Zlatan would exploit it for their own gain. But she reminds him that he put an antler collar around her neck to exploit her power for his gain. Something that he tries to claim is for them, to try to conquer the fold together. As he's holding her hand, he says, "You cannot do this on your own, and neither can I." She, however, looks at him and says, "You could have made me your equal. Instead, you've made me this," meaning a girl with neck antlers and a prisoner. So at this point, Kirigan's done trying to play Mr. Nice Guy, and he leaves. He gets word as he exits the tent from Victor that Maul has escaped. And Kirigan doesn't really care about him, but he does tell Victor if he gets anywhere near Alina, kill him. At this point, there's nothing left to do but wait for the ship to leave. Now, Kaz and his group have also made it to the fold, but Kaz tells both Inej and Jesper, "It's time we cut our losses." Kaz leaves both Jesper and Inej alone, and Inej tells Jesper, "I can't go back to the menagerie." And Jesper looks at her and says, "I was going to tell you to trust Kaz, that he'd never let you go back, but I don't have the right to tell you what you should do with your shot at freedom." So that night, Inej has packed up her stuff. She's planning on leaving, but she does want to say goodbye to Kaz, and Kaz knows that she's planning on leaving. Kaz doesn't really have anything to say to Inej. She starts to walk off, but he says, "Wait, you were right. The Sun Summoner. She is real. I've been trying to go over to my head over and over again, but she is the real deal. But you have to understand, she's a girl with a gift, not some savior." And Inej, who's getting frustrated, says, "If you don't believe she's a saint, what do you believe in?" And Kaz answers, "You, and me, and Jesper, and my crows," meaning his employees. They have a whole conversation about loyalty and about how much she has truly meant to him. He tells her, "No saint has ever watched over me like you have." With a speech like that, Inej can't leave. So she sticks it out. And the next morning, the group head to the conductor's train, but it's being inspected by a couple of soldiers from the First Army. So Kaz and them figure they'll just wait it out. Eventually, the army's going to have to go tell a commander what they found, but to their surprise, the army doesn't go and get a commander. They blow the thing up. So now they need to go to a plan B, which is going to be to mug some foreign diplomats and steal their identity, which they're able to do. They're looking good. But right before they actually walk onto the ship, Alina and Kirigan, surrounded by a bunch of Grishas, make their way on. Kirigan, to make sure that Alina doesn't go anywhere, ends up chaining her up. And while everyone's pretty terrified of going through this thing, Alina is way more confident going through it the second time around. But Alina, Kaz, Jesper, Inej, Kirigan, they're all on the ship, as is Maul, who is hiding below deck. The ship then leaves and heads right into the fold. Thanks for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to this channel. Like the video if you liked it. Hit thumbs down if you don't. Be nice in the comments section. Nasty comments hurt my feelings. I work hard on these. If I make a mistake, it happens. If you don't see the next video up in the end screen, it'll be up soon. Sharing is caring. Put it on your MySpace page or your away message. And check out my podcast, Scene Invaders, wherever you listen to podcasts.